2.0 or communities in general, how it could change the face of rural India in our oldest profession, legal profession, agriculture, right? So you think about, how are people benefiting from such technologies within companies? How are corporates using it?
I was going to get into some of these in my presentation, but I'll sort of very briefly summarize. What we're seeing is that there is this difference, there is this inflection point at this moment. It's apparently the first generation of college kids passing out in the US, and possibly 3-4 years later in India, that does not know an era before the internet. I mean, they do not remember a time when there was no internet. So this is the web generation, and that generation is starting to join companies now. This is a generation that's not an information worker. It's a web worker. In other words, it's a generation that does not memorize knowledge. It's a generation that doesn't value facts as such, but it's a generation that values connections with people, and it knows where to find information. It doesn't know the information, but it knows where to find it, and it knows who knows it. So this, Orkut using, Facebook using, Yahoo Answer using, Wikipedia using generation comes into enterprises and finds something that's completely useless, in the sense that it's legacy systems, no matter how sophisticated. So the time for enterprises to adopt some of those best practices in the consumer internet is there, and you have to do it. And with every year, it's becoming more and more critical. So I'll give you examples of what we are doing. Primarily, blogging has sort of taken off on top of traditional ways of getting information, from a top down. Hey, there's corporate communication, and they tell you something is going on here. Take this news. So that's changing into more of an informal blogging format, where one, very importantly, you can comment on it, and then people can comment on your comments, and then you can quote somebody. So there's a far greater deal of social interaction that happens around. So blogging is clearly one such case. We do have wikis. That's like a very I mean, from the IT industry, I can say for sure that usage of wikis is a no-brainer. We have people working across geographies, teams that are distributed, and people were frankly emailing Word documents across. And by the end of any document, it would be version 42 or something. So clearly, using a wiki, having instant messaging enabled within that, being able to share it with people, being able to review, being able to have conversations around collaborative content editing is an absolute must. So these are merely the surface, though. What we're seeing now, in a few steps, but possibly will change over a period of time, is the broader impact of social networking on the web. I mean, we know LinkedIn, right? And we know people social network on Facebook. So what does it mean to my HR department, right? Ideally speaking, my HR department needs to understand that when it's hiring somebody, am I hiring a guy who has the potential to bring some more people from the company he's jumping from, right? Do I have the ability to analyze, if somebody's submitted a resignation, do I understand, hey, what are the chances that he might take other people? Do I do such sort of social network analysis? It's not mainstream yet. It's currently mostly research, and there are a few tools here and there, but this exactly is some of these more pervasive social networking tools is what needs to start coming to the enterprises, and that's where we are really. Blogs and wikis are more or less becoming standard now, and that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Jokes with TCS in case I forgot to mention that. So they're obviously leading the charge in terms of how do you get some of these best practices from the public forums and use them within corporations. I want to ask Kiruba something a little different, which is I know he's headed up an initiative where he's been able to get a community to do something specific by leveraging the entire community rather than allowing a bunch of thousand people to do whatever the hell they want. If you typically look at a social network or a community, people talk about anything that they want to talk about. Rarely much productive comes out of one single forum thread or something like that. So I want to open it up to Kiruba and what he found.
Sure. Let me give you a specific example. Feb 2007. We wanted to hold this event called WikiCamp. Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, flew in for this event. Krish, you were there as well. 300 plus people all over India. Supposed to be the biggest event focusing on wikis, not necessarily on Wikipedia. The night before, a bunch of volunteers, we sat together. This is about 10 o'clock in the night. We sat together doing that one final round of checking. Are we good for tomorrow morning's event? We're sitting in this conference room. One guy comes and says, hey, you know what? Tomorrow, there's bound to be a lot of people who may not really know much about wikis. Is there somewhere we can give them a kind of a ready reckoner or some kind of an easy-to-understand guide? All of us sniggered. Some laughed out loud. Are you out of your mind? In 8 hours' time, there's an event that's going to start, and now you want to give a booklet? The sniggers stopped. People started saying, hey, why don't we give this a shot? For some unknown reason, and I'll tell you as I'm saying this, my hair actually stands on my arms, right? It's an extremely moving moment when there was silence followed, and then everyone said, let's give this a shot. At about 10:15, all of us sat down and we brainstormed quickly on what are the kind of chapters that the booklet should have. At 11 o'clock, we left the conference room for our individual homes. Each person armed with the responsibility of authoring a chapter. By about 2 o'clock, each one of us completed the chapter out, and there was another team, and mind you, this is not just a team in Chennai working together, but there's actually a global team trying to put this together. There's another team, as people were writing on the wiki, another team was actually proofreading the work that was being written, spell check, correct the grammar, the whole sort of work. There was another team that was doing the layout of the book. A fourth team was actually designing the book cover. It went across to the printers at 5, and at 6:30, all of us woke up early. Whatever little sleep that we got, we went to the auditorium to do other things, and about 7 o'clock, there's this packet covered in brown cover that comes in. You open this out, there's a 16-page booklet sort of a thing. It kind of looks like that, but half the size. You open that up and smell the ink. I'll tell you what, it's an amazing feeling of collaboration. And for the first time, we realized what this Web 2.0 that people talk about, right? That in action. We walked the talk. All of us, enjoy contributing to Wikipedia. All of us talk about all this groupisms and all that. But for the first time, having that baby in our hands, we realized the value of participation, of collaborative participation. And I think that, in essence, truly is what Web 2.0 really suggests. That's my take.
Just one little example. That's just one little real-life example of what the power of a community can do. These people weren't incentivized, picking up on the first conversation. They did it because they felt like this is a place where they could shine and they could belong. They wanted to contribute. I'm not saying incentives are a bad thing. My entire company is based on incentives. So I'm not going to poo-poo that model. But the reason people collaborate, the reason people show up is because they want to be part of the crowd. And we'll dive a little bit more into that. But before we open it up to a little bit more, I want to ask Arun. Arun's with Yahoo India, and he spent a lot of time trying to look at what does Yahoo do, and Yahoo is, of course, a global player. I want to ask him about, part of what we looked at when Dr. Chatterjee was talking about was expert information and knowledge. Web 2.0 communities are a great way for people to get bite-sized information. I remember when I was a little kid, right? You would go to your dad, or I would go to my dad and ask him to solve a math problem, right? A calculus problem. He wouldn't solve it. Instead, he'd be giving me the entire lecture on the Pythagoras theorem and how sines and cosines came about. I hated him for that, right? Finally, we are at a world where I can ask a question and get a simple answer, right? Nobody's trying to teach me anything. So I want to actually open it up to Arun and see what he has to say about Yahoo doing that.
So good afternoon, everyone. So essentially, I thought I'll just, since this was a forum about Web 2.0, give a little bit of the perspectives around that, but specifically focus on a little bit more about, knowledge search or this particular question: can mass collaboration fundamentally change the way people find information? And there are a lot of testimonials to this in terms of there's a lot of content being generated in Wiki, and there's a lot of algorithmic search, which is the current mechanisms for search, but there are new kinds of things building up, like Yahoo Answers. I'll give a few examples from that in particular. But essentially, when I think of Web 2.0, there is of course there's content. Is one aspect of it, and then there is a lot of semantics around content, and getting more and more semantics about that content, and being able to actually help people find the right kind of content is one set of directions that it's going. And a lot of the content is also community controlled. It's not necessarily institution driven. Again, Wikipedia is a great example. The other thing is around, if you take advertising, I think that's getting very hyper-targeted, which implies that we are getting to know more and more about users and their behaviors and their preferences and the context in which that is happening, and that we will be able to now profile users and be able to bring them the right advertisement. And then that could even translate to just bringing them the right content. So essentially, information retrieval has been a previous paradigm, but information supply could be the new paradigm if we are able to really understand our users that well. So for example, queries on weathers may disappear because we know where you are, and we can show you the weather on your screen. Maybe it's like a widget on the sitting on your device, as an example. So essentially, understanding and profiling users, that's another strong dimension. Then definitely the application dimension is another, which is apps are becoming online, as well as there's hybrid apps and devices. And then there's the whole scalability issue when you are dealing with billions of documents and billions of users. But more specifically, when it comes to users creating knowledge and knowledge search, I just had a few things to talk about, particularly in that context. So at least one of the things that we had been looking at within Yahoo is this notion of social search, where it's not just content in response to a search, but it's also people in response to a search, where somebody who knows who we think knows the answer to a particular query, that you can now connect these two people in a particular context that will fulfill your information need or whatever other need it is. Plus, the other dimension is that where there is not enough content, there is a whole base of people creating a knowledge base. And specifically, Yahoo Answers is one example where people ask questions, and there's a set of people providing answers. So one of the big assets of Yahoo is its 500 million active community. Every month there are 500 million users coming into Yahoo. And Yahoo Answers has been a fairly successful product since its launch over the last 12 or 15 odd months. And it has about more than 80 million people using it. And it's predominantly, these statistics are from the US, and then there are more than 20 million resolved questions. So essentially the way it works is people ask questions, then there are various people who answer, and then there are people who can vote on the answers, and then the person who asked the question can find a resolved answer, and there's some kind of points people accumulate, and that acts as the incentives. So there are several examples where people, for example, being able to get very specific questions answered, like I have my friend's example here, where his baby had colic late in the night, and he asked this question: can I give gripe water to my baby? And then within 10 minutes there was an answer. Of course, he didn't think it was important enough to call a doctor in the midnight, But within 10 minutes he had an answer, and soon enough 5 answers followed. And the one that got resolved was an answer which actually told him which brand of gripe water to use that will not have a side effect. So to be able to get that kind of an answer in the time frame of 10 minutes is hard to just do it with a regular search engine. And essentially this is one specific example. But I think more generally the question is how do you leverage group intelligence and combine that with algorithmic search to get you the best results over time. And that definitely does impose a set of challenges. So you need a set of tools, obviously, for people to be able to create these content and be able to ask the questions, be able to answer the questions. And you need a set of technologies to actually enable discovery of this information and be able to, when somebody asks a question, if it's already in the knowledge base, you need to be able to pull that back and give that answer. Or at least you need to have enough knowledge about the people in your community or in your network to be able to at least connect this person to that person, and hopefully there is some exchange that can happen between the two that satisfies the need of this person. So broadly, there are a lot of technological challenges in this kind of an interaction. There are also a lot of scalability challenges. Essentially, at least if you take the search perspective, it's no longer just read-only, it's more of a writable web. And again, like I said, we have a large volume of people and content to be able to interact in this kind of a context. So that's one particular phenomenon. The other that I kind of was going to briefly touch upon was several aspects of sharing of content that's happening, like media content. I think Flickr is another very good example of where people actually share a lot of content and tag them, and where there's the notion of folksonomy, where people just give a set of tags that they think of at that time in that particular context, and which is at the other extreme of the traditional notion of taxonomy, where somebody has determined that, okay, here is a particular structure that is important. So in some sense, both have their pros and cons, essentially. So taxonomy is fairly closed. It's hard for a lot of people to agree on, whereas the folksonomy is fairly open, and it is prone to noise. It's very user-driven, very context-specific. And I think how do you actually get some hybrid of these two is one of the things that perhaps, because we have a system of taxonomies in place, and then there's a system of folksonomies, but is there some way in which these two can be combined to make meaningful sense? And it goes back to the example Dr. Jayanta talked about, where there is a lot of folk knowledge and then there's a lot of perhaps academic knowledge, institutionalized knowledge. And what's the best way to leverage both to add value back to the community? And I think these are all interesting questions and hard problems that research has been tackling. So I can take questions at a later time, but broadly these were a few pieces that I had in mind.
I thought I'd like to add Rohit mentioned about how he prefers now Google to the way to know about, get simple answers on geometry, or Arun talked about the power of Yahoo Answers and so on. But I hope many of you realize that how extensively these systems are creating stress for teachers like us. Because first of all, we have to be able to add more value than Yahoo, than Google, than MSN to attract the students to our classes. Students no longer like to hear answers or even topics which are more than 2 pages long, because that's how, they are now used to knowledge. And also, I was forced to create some pseudo-identities on the web because, as you know, in management teaching, we use cases and also often assignments. And I have to first check with my pseudo-identities that how many of those assignments and case studies are already solved by other people and available for sharing because otherwise there is no way of grading, because many of the things you might feel totally thrilled might have come from somebody from Brazil who has solved actually that case and is now being shared with somebody at IIT Kanpur. So these are all, some side reactions of Web 2.0, which may be not good for this particular conference, but maybe something interesting to discuss.
Thanks, guys. So we'll open it up to questions from the audience in 1 minute. We've still got 40 minutes to go. But I want to ask one question of every member of the panel. I think most of us believe, or if some of you don't, please voice out, that ultimately this power of communities is going to change the way we operate. We just saw one example, Dr. Chatterjee, talking about how it's changing the way professors and the way academia needs to change the way they teach and they grade. My company focuses on how the community can help you hire better people. So I wanted to open it up and say, what else do you think that we would never have imagined 2 years ago or 5 years ago that you think we would never do as a community, but now the community seems to be the best source of getting it? We've got gripe water, we've got education, we've got jobs. I want to open it up from that end.
In fact, I'll share something that we do as part of the Innovation Lab, Web 2.0 Innovation Lab. How we recruit people to the lab is we do the Google test. In other words, what's your Google footprint? If I type your name, what do I get? What do I see on your Facebook profile, Orkut profile? What do I see on your MySpace profile? Do you post pictures of yourself drunk, etc.? These things do happen. So, do you say that you took drugs or something like that? So that's one part. The second aspect is that reputation on the internet is sort of like social proof, and it's proof that's been validated by your peers, so to speak. So if you're on an open source community contributing to Linux code or to say a Firefox extension, the number of people downloading that is sort of like social proof about how good you are. So in general, over a period of time, I think this is a big change in the sense I think the resume is dead, will be dead at least. A resume is generally a pack of lies that you put together in order to cheat somebody and get a job, right? But ideally speaking, you really shouldn't be able to lie. You should have your web identity be able to, to prove that. So that's one aspect that I think will change. The second thing that I see that will change the way we operate, within enterprises, is a far greater deal of bottom-up knowledge networks as opposed to top-down knowledge networks. I'll give you an example. Usually companies tend to have skills databases. Hey, at least for an IT company, it's very important. Hey, are you a J2E guy? You're an insurance domain expert. How does that happen? Somebody comes and says, hey, I got a certification, and somebody says, yes, you've got a certification, so you are a level 3 J2E expert. So that's the traditional model of how skill, etc., and and eventually appraisal, salaries and all of that tend to get tied to that. So one of the things that we are experimenting, it's interesting because he talked about Yahoo Answers. We in fact believe that a platform similar to Yahoo Answers within the enterprise, if you're not interested in sharing your knowledge on the public internet, that is, makes a lot of sense, especially for a company like us where we say, hey, I have a problem with this SQL statement in Oracle, and I'd like 100,000 employees to be able to look at that and answer and gain points and have that tied back to their the skills database and the appraisal and all of that. And I really have the ability to identify experts from the edges of the enterprise. So the use of something like a platform like Yahoo Answers is something that has the potential to change. Social software within the enterprise has the potential to change how experts arise. I mean, so expertise is not something that gets sort of conferred upon you. It's something that you have to. Your reputation is something that you build. So the same way that it works on the consumer internet, we want to try and experiment with that here. So similar to that, there are several other examples. I won't get into them in detail, but this Yahoo Answers experience is very interesting. The third thing that we need to keep in mind when we talk about Web 2.0 inside the enterprise is that people tend to be very, very married to the tools that they're used to. So in the case of most companies, it's email. So if email is not the right way to do that, I mean, even if you're just, perhaps calling somebody sitting right next to you, hey, shall we go for a cup of coffee? People still use email. So it's those habits are not easy to change. So what is also important is that when we experiment with these sort of things within enterprises, you've got to take into account the habits that people tend to have. So in other words, if I have something like a Yahoo Answers, I need the ability to email a question. I mean, don't make me go into a website, sign in, and then answer, right? I want to email in a question. I mean, if I'm young, I want to SMS in a question to the system. And I want to get responses on my mobile phone, or through email. So these are some of those other considerations where you need to consider how people behave and then design your social software around that. So, but broadly, I think the thing that Web 2.0 can do within the enterprise is to flatten enterprises. Is to really there's this saying that people generally rise and get promoted in an enterprise till they reach their level of maximum uselessness. So in the sense that, hey, I was at this, I was really bad at this job, so I got promoted. So then I really sucked at that job, I got promoted. So eventually you reach a role where you can get by with, doing whatever it is you're doing. So the whole idea that now you can't really fake your reputation. So that's exactly what needs to come. So that's what I wanted to say.
This event is about social networking, right? Right? The dessert was good, right? But I'll tell you what. This event is such a wasted opportunity. Such a wasted opportunity. The hall is packed. And there are two time zones in any conference that I value the most. The first is a coffee break. The second is a lunch break. So I was really happy when we got almost an hour and a half lunch break. That's the biggest I've seen in any conference. I was like, wow, this is good. Right? Unfortunately, I didn't know who should I hit on, as in I should go and introduce myself, who should I speak with. So for me, it was an hour and a half of ineffective networking opportunity. What I would have preferred is for me to know who are all the different people out here. Who are the people that catch my fancy? Who do I want to be friends with? If I had known this earlier, the lunch break would have been a far, far better opportunity. So what I'm left with is this booklet with pictures and profile. Great stuff, right? So at least, I could go and meet up with that. But I'm a believer. I'm an extremely strong believer, and trust me when I'm saying this because I'm writing a book on this, is that I believe that the audience, the collective knowledge of the audience is far, far higher than the collective knowledge of the folks in the panel or in the speaker thing, right? So I really want to know you. And when I'm speaking for myself, I'm actually speaking for all of us together. Wouldn't you want to have spent proper time networking around? So I think sometimes we get ahead of ourselves in the sense that it's Web 2.0 and we all think we should all do it on the net. But actually, like what Doctor said just perfectly is that it's actually real world synergies that exist out there. And that, in essence, is Web 2.0.
All right, so let's open it up to the people. Questions. We've got 30 minutes to go, so let's take a question all the way in the back. Could we get a mic to that gentleman, please? And you can ask the question of the panel or anybody in particular. Anybody else has a mic? Whoever. There we go.
Quick question for Krish. Can you say a little bit more about how you integrate Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 in your company? You mentioned briefly that example of Web to Web and SMS along with a wiki, which is a great example. But I'd like to hear a bit more, because very often there's too much hype just on the Web 2.0 part without looking at the legacy investments in Web 1.0 within the enterprise. Thanks.
You're very right, and that's a very, very valid question. Web 2.0 inside enterprises cannot be about throwing away old stuff and putting in place large fonts, gradients, Ajax, and all those sort of buzzwords that Web 2.0 tends to be about. You really cannot do that. It's really about even small little things. I'll give a very simple example. Take your, say, corporate notifications. I mean, let's say you have a space in your intranet where corporate communications says, hey, this is happening, so and so, we won a new deal in Brazil, etc., etc. Putting a small little comment or feedback or a 5-star rating there is actually saying something. It changes the way people look at that content. It somehow makes them participate in it. So in the sense that it's not about putting together large platforms. It's taking existing platforms and figuring out what social interaction elements could make sense there and could add value there. So you can take legacy systems and add very lightweight social interaction layers that enable this sort of thing. So that would be how you would address this.
Question here.
Almost everyone here is saying that it's not about technology. Sorry, if you can just wait till the mic comes, the rest of us can hear.
Hello. I have a simple question for Arun. What is Yahoo's answer to Facebook apps and open social?
Okay. So Facebook apps and open social. So the fact is, the whole social networking wave is not something Yahoo capitalized on, and but still, I think there is a huge asset which Yahoo has, which involves its set of users that are interacting on mail and messenger primarily. Plus, of course, Yahoo did have a couple of social networking experiments, which was the 360 and then the MASH and things like that, which didn't themselves pan out. But I think overall, there is a strategy of I mean, the strategy itself will unfold soon. I don't know how much of that I can talk about it today, but I'll just give you a sense that broadly there is a notion of having openness in the Yahoo context itself, where there are strong networks, strong assets, strong content. And essentially, Yahoo itself has a fairly strong open strategy both around content and its user base, and I think that's something that will roll out over the next few months that you can see. So it's not necessarily about putting yet another social networking application, but it's really things that are our core assets and building and existing networks, and actually making those more valuable, more useful through, and as well as opening certain things out. So.
Okay, the question I had was that all of us here are really talking about Web 2.0 not being something related with technology, but about people. Tim Berners-Lee also accepts that Web 2.0, as we are talking about now, is actually what he had in mind when he originally conceptualized the net. So what is it about now? What is it about today that makes it important for us to discuss Web 2.0? What is the changed context? Because social networks, as we are talking about here, existed even before anything like communication was even known. I mean, people were creating social networks even when there were no telephones, for example. So what is it that the context has offered now, which we are talking about the Web 2.0?
Okay. I think the big point is price per ounce of technology. As the price per ounce of technology is declining, therefore price per unit of bandwidth is declining, and as the penetration and density are expanding, therefore it is creating new paradigms. In a way, Web 2.0 has been created by Web 1.0 or whatever, if there was something like that, and also many other simultaneous technological developments that are taking place. And I feel that while we are discussing a lot about Orkuts or Facebooks or Flickr or YouTubes, we are not discussing enough that how much it is actually impacting. For example, when I was in many of you might remember that in 1994-95, a big thing came about was called 360 degrees feedback. And I was the country manager of India, and the 360 degree feedback was quite shocking for me. And it was equally shocking for many, many other senior executives. We talked about this bottom-up knowledge flow, and we are talking about flattening. We have been talking about flattening organizations for a long time. But truly now, I am aware of through many interactions, the senior managers are definitely, they're not equipped. The people who are young engineers who are joining, they are very adept at this, and the senior managers definitely need to look at how they manage, what their management styles are, what leadership will be in this new era, what way teachers will teach in this new era. These are exciting and very challenging areas of research, and not enough is. So difference is coming due to the so-called the economic issues with the law of increasing return, the declining prices, the more complex the technology, cheaper it is, and all of those issues. And I think, therefore, the impact is becoming pervasive. And we do not as yet know. I think we will perhaps know after 5 years, when more research will be done, that what will be the new world like. Many of you might have seen those Tom Cruise picture that as you walk into the store, immediately your eyeball is sensed, and it immediately starts addressing advertisements to you that what new shirts are available or what new items are available in the store for you. How far we are prepared for that kind of continuous targeted onslaught of knowledge. I'm not sure whether we are all really prepared. Sometimes I know people who take their landline remote phone as well as their mobile phone to the bathroom, to the toilet. So where else it will go, I don't know exactly.
So, go ahead.
Very quickly, as Dr. Chatterjee said, the price of technology is one thing. The pervasiveness of technology is another thing. I mean, we're slowly entering an era where it's not just about me social networking with you. I mean, my phone can social network with your phone, and I mean, pretty much soon my fridge can social network with the grocery store. So it's the pervasiveness. And the third thing is the rapid rate at which information asymmetry is disappearing. I mean, people are always been socializing, networking, but there was always information asymmetry. I mean, you had other social structures in place. You might have had the caste system here, the feudal system in Europe. Certain kinds of information were held closely by certain groups of people. So in that respect, I'll give you an example of what's possible today. That's the reason why it's important today. This is a case study by a Harvard professor. The name escapes me right now. I can find out. In Kerala. Fishermen on the coast of Kerala are actually starting to become more prosperous than before because of the use of mobile phones. And how it's helping is very interesting. Earlier, they had this classic problem of information asymmetry. Here I am with a product whose price decreases every moment it's out of the water, right? Fish is like that. And the second thing is, I don't know and the price of fish is something that's very dynamic in the sense of, if I catch 100 kgs of prawns today, there's a certain price. But if only 50 kgs got today, the price of prawns shoots up. So it's that sort of economy. And I don't know this information because I only catch about 10 grams of it. The third thing is that I really don't know the rest of the fishermen all along the coast about how much they capture. And the fourth thing is that I am stuck with middlemen who exploit this information asymmetry and charge the prices that they want to charge, right? So what cell phones allowed people to do is that they use SMS text messaging to quickly share, hey, I got, 10 grams of prawn or 10 kgs of prawn today, 4 kgs of sear fish and, 3 crabs, etc., etc. And where did I catch it? And then where is the best price and where is the maximum demand? So now suddenly the fisherman is armed with information that he can use with the middleman and say no to a certain price because he knows that's an invalid price. So the fact that this is happening is because of the pervasiveness of that technology. So that's why it's becoming important today, because it can solve that.